Welcome back, everybody. Today we're getting into the scope that you see right here on this particular rifle and that you've seen throughout the intro. I guess we should talk about that real briefly. This particular rifle is a CMMG. This is their 22 nozzler variant. A review on this is coming shortly, but today we're focused on this scope right here. This is the Bushnell Engage. This one here is a 4-16 power scope, and they make these in terms of the Engage lineup in a ton of different magnification offerings. These are a new offering here from Bushnell, and basically what they did was they wanted to bring a very affordable entry-level type of scope that could perform as well as, or at least keep up anyway, with some of the more expensive offerings in their line for folks who are either sort of new to shooting or just want to put something on their budget rig that they can actually count on. So this scope is actually full of features. We're going to get into those here in just a second. There's, again, a ton of different features going on here with the reticles and the turrets and all that stuff that we'll touch on, but I want to point out up front, this is not an illuminated scope, and I think that's one of the ways that Bushnell managed to keep the cost down, is to not put all of that into the scope. So these, I think the MSRP on this one right now is like $399. Of course, we'll put links down below for anybody looking to pick one of these up, but of course, street price will be lower. So let's get into some of the details of the scope, and then after that, we'll get into the reticle. The scope comes with both front and rear flip caps, so that's certainly a good thing for you guys who want to protect your glass out there. Generally speaking, as you guys know, I tend to pull my back one off because it just gets in my way, but leave the front one on. I will do that after the review with this scope. On the rear, we have a eye focus ring, and it's adjustable to give you plenty of different focal capabilities depending on your eyesight, so that way you can focus the reticle to your eye. I tend to have pretty good vision, at least as of right now at this point in my life, post-surgery, and I generally leave my eye rings all the way down because my eye tends to focus to it just as they come from the factory. But for those of you guys that need the help and need that assistance with that focal ring, you got it. So there is that for you. Continuing to move forward, we have the magnification ring here, and it adjusts pretty smoothly, as you guys just saw, all the way from 4 to 16. And to rotate it, the full magnification range is about 1/3 of a rotation around. So some of them are a little bit shorter, as you guys know, some of them are a little bit longer, but I think it's kind of a good range. Most people will be able to do it with one throw, or at least 1.5 throws. So it does have the ability to add a throw lever on there should you want to do so. Of course, that will be an aftermarket add, again, if you choose to do so. So throw lever, no issues with it at all. It's pretty smooth, but not so easy that it's going to get bumped off easily. As I indicated earlier, the turrets have a lot going on. So first and foremost, they are locking turrets. So locking turrets on a scope of this budget is kind of cool, right? So if you want to actually adjust them, you have to pull up and then rotate wherever you want to rotate, and then push back down to set it. That's the same for both the windage and the elevation. In terms of elevation and windage, they are MOA compatible, as is the reticle. So it's MOA, everything matches. It's not a mix master like some budget scopes out there. So that is a good thing there. Each turn will equate to a 1/4 MOA, and I believe you have 50 MOA of adjustment for both the windage and elevation. So that's quite a bit. It'll give you a good range that you can put this on, and with the 16 power, some folks are going to use this for some long range shooting, I'm sure, and it will give you the capability to dial that in if you want to. So there is that. Another feature of these turrets is that they're toolless in terms of zero stop, so you can screw your little cap off, pull it up, and then put it right back there on your point of zero, like that. Screw it back down and it will be set. And one thing people were asking me, I think it was on Instagram, was did I think that was going to sort of rotate out? The answer is no. The knurling on the piece that actually attaches to the turrets themselves is much stronger and bigger than the actual knurling on the little part that screws out to set it. So with that, I would imagine it would be close to impossible to accidentally grab the wrong piece, which is the top. So I think it's a pretty solid system overall. Another neat thing about these turrets is that the windage is marked right and left, so that way from the shooter's perspective, when you're actually on the rifle, you can kind of look off to the side and easily see that these are going to be dialed either right or left, depending on which way you're moving, obviously, or if you're dialing for wind. You don't have to actually poke your head around the outside and look at the top of the turret or the outside of the turret to see which way you're moving it. It's clearly visible from the shooter's perspective, so I do like that. On the left side of the scope, the parallax adjustment goes from 10 yards all the way out to infinity, so the capability to dial it down to 10 yards for parallax is cool because it gives you just more versatility with this scope. So people who are going to use this on air rifles, 22s, or anything like that, we're going to like that capability to bring it in for those closer shots or for the smaller calibers, depending on how you're using the scope. Now it goes all the way up to infinity, like we said, so you can dial it in as you see fit, depending on the targets you're engaging. Now we'll get into the reticle on the scope. As you guys can see here on your screen, this is an MOA reticle, and we have large hash marks and then smaller hash marks in between for the sort of in-between hold-off points that you would want to use. Basically, I dialed in a few different loads here on my ballistic app to see how it would look on this reticle, and of course, this is a second focal plane scope, so the holdovers and ability to range estimate with the reticle are only at the 16 power, and of course if you have the other magnifications it'll be at the max power for those as well. So here we have our M193 out of a 16-inch barrel, and you guys can see where your holdovers are there. Of course, all of these are going to be zeroed at 100 yards, and I shoot about 200 feet of elevation. I think I use 70 for the temperature, just for the example here. So you can see you have the ability with that M193 to, without dialing, go all the way out to 800 yards using these points of reference throughout the scope. And next up we have the 22 nozzler. This is a 77 grain load in the actual load that we use throughout this rifle's use. So you guys can see this one here with that load will go out to 879 yards without dialing there on the bottom. Now I should also point out that with 308 it's going to give you about 800, I think 811 yards, as you guys can see here on the side of your screen. So very versatile with that MOA reticle, just like a mill reticle would be. So let's discuss MOA versus mill real quick, because I'm sure it'll come up down below in the comments section. I think either are perfectly usable, and both have their pros and cons. But one thing that I think American shooters anyway will see, or think anyway, is that the MOA reticles are just easier for Americans' brains to understand. Now I was trained on the mill reticle, and my brain now works in mills after doing that for many, many years. But I think people who who haven't been formally trained on the mill system will pick up MOA easier. That's been my experience when explaining it to people, and I think it's a smart move by Bushnell for this particular scope, which again is designed sort of at entry-level users to use the MOA reticle. And get a ballistic app, run your data for whatever the load you're using, and you should be just fine. Now, one thing I wish this reticle had was some sort of subtensions, whether it was marked 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or something that'll just give you a reference point, because as anybody who's shot long distance knows, sometimes at distance you want to make sure your holdover, whether it be for elevation or your wind hold, is correct, and you end up counting the large hash marks. I do it anyway just to make sure I'm right, because it is easy to get lost when you get 3 or 4 down. Are you on 3? Are you on 4? You just tend to want to count, and having a reference point there would be nice. If they ever come out with a Gen 2, that would be my recommendation. As I mentioned in the intro, these scopes come in a number of different magnification ranges, so of course the weights will vary depending on the model you have, but this particular one right here comes in at 20 ounces on the dot with my scale. So this is in a 30mm SPR mount here by Aero Precision, another lightweight mount, trying to keep it sort of as light as possible with this gigantic barrel that we have hanging out at the end here. But for the weight, for the glass, all that stuff, and for the price point, again, not to beat a dead horse, but I really do think it's a very good scope, and I will probably be picking up more Engage scopes in the future. So if you guys have any questions about the scope that we didn't answer in today's video review, you can always post down below in the comments section. You can also post over at my Facebook page. As always, that's generally speaking the best way to get in touch with me, simply because I don't always see my messages here on YouTube, Full30, or wherever else you guys are following me. I tend to see all of them over there on Facebook, at least as of right now. And that's about it, guys. Thanks for watching. Thanks for subscribing. If you're not subscribed yet, please go ahead and hit that subscribe button, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.